Okay, so I'm starting in the graphics-based code folder, and today we're going to be learning one new method from the Canvas class. Just to go over what a class is, this whole time you guys have been writing like Easy Reader and you've been writing Rectangle, and I called them objects. But what are objects? What are classes really? Well, Rectangle isn't something Java came up with. Rectangle is something that's inside like this forbidden package folder that you guys don't really touch. I just want to show you guys that it isn't coming from nowhere. There's a rectangle.java in here if you guys can see that. And that's why when we can make this rectangle object and call .draw and .translate and stuff like that. I can actually show you guys in here if you guys want. So if I find draw. And inside here there's a draw method. Someone wrote this method. So whenever I make a rectangle and call .draw, this method's going to be called. And there's a whole bunch of other methods like set color, fill, and stuff like that. But for now, you guys have only learned draw and translate. So this stuff isn't coming out of nowhere. It exists inside the package folder. And that's why we're allowed to make the rectangle. And the same thing with Easy Reader, except that one's in the input-based code folder and it's kind of like in your face. Actually, I can show you guys. So if I go to T21 and I open the input-based code folder, you'll see easyreader.java. So that's why we're able to make these Easy Reader objects, okay? Because there's a class that holds it. Enough about classes. That isn't about today's lesson. I just wanted to get that point out that, you know, this stuff isn't coming out of nowhere, okay? Someone made Rectangle, someone made Easy Reader, and in the future, you guys might even make your own classes, and you will for sure if you're in the AP course. So yeah, we're gonna learn the .rand method today. And what .rand does is it gets a random number from 0 to the number you specify. So what I mean by that, I can create a canvas object. So canvas my canvas, just like we did with rectangles, just like we did with Easy Reader. So canvas my canvas equals new canvas. All right. Then I can call my canvas .rand. And inside, I would say there's a range. So I actually give it one number. I would say 1000. And what this is doing is it's getting a random number between 0 and 1000. And the reason why I put a bracket here and a parentheses here is if you guys have taken a math class before, you know that a bracket means inclusive and a parentheses means exclusive. So in reality, this mycanvas.rand is picking a random number from 0 to 999. This is actually a good way to memorize like numbers in Java. A lot of things count this way in Java. I think there's only one exception I can think of. But whenever you're counting from things, typically it's going to be inclusive and then exclusive at the end. So just know that. And I need to print this. So system.out.println. Right. So if I save, I should see a number between 0 and 999. Some random number between that. Okay. So I'm going to compile. And I get an error. It says Canvas has private access in Canvas. Well, what does that mean? Well, this whole time I have been initializing objects whenever I want to make a rectangle or, you know, read from the console with Easy Reader. But what if I wanted to use a method from those classes without actually initializing the object? That's where static comes into play. But why? Why do we use static? Why do we have to have this workaround when you can just make an object every time? The actual definition is pretty complicated and it's related to memory and the efficiency of programs, but for now just simply think of static as the do not initialize an object warning, and you guys will see what I mean by that in when I start coding. You guys don't have to really pay attention to exactly what static does. If you look it up on Google, it'll give you some definition that you aren't familiar with, but it's okay. You guys, unless you're in the AP course and way later, you'll have to know exactly what static is. But yeah, let's just go back to the program. And what I meant by a do not initialize an object warning is all this stuff that I'm doing here. This canvas, my canvas, new canvas, and the rectangle, my rect, new rectangle. I'm creating an object from the rectangle class. Well, as the error stated, I can't make a canvas object like I have done with the other ones. So if I get rid of canvas, my canvas, how do I call the rand? How do I call this method? Because I don't have a my canvas anymore. Well, to call methods in this static way from classes is to just use the class name. So in here I would put canvas. Instead of naming the canvas and giving it a variable name and whatnot, I'm going to use the class name. And this would be the same way I would say like rectangle.draw, right? Rather than creating a rectangle object, I would write the actual class name. There are advantages to this and disadvantages to this, but yeah, so just know that because rand is a static method, we use the class name rather than making an object and then using our object name. Okay, just something you gotta memorize. So let's see it. I'm gonna save and compile and run. Oops. Right, so 578. Let's run it one more time. 656. So if you guys can see, it's gonna give me a random number every time. 826. Alright, so you guys can test this out with different numbers and whatnot. But the key point to this lesson is that I'm not creating this canvas object, okay? And there are also creative ways you can use to manipulate the range of the numbers that you want. So let's say I had an int up here. Let's get rid of all this. I'll leave the print line. And I created an int rand num. And in here I can say canvas.rand, and I can put the standard like, let's say 10. And this will give me a number from 0 to 9. But what if I wanted the 1 through 10? What if I don't want 0 in my program? And I would put a +1, right? Because if you think about it, if I get any number between 0 through 9 and add a 1 to it, it's always going to be between 1 through 10. So if I put random num in here and run the program, oops, compile and run, it'll say 1, and let's try it again. A 2, a 2, a 1. Okay, I need a different number. Right, 10. Perfect. That's perfect. Right, so if you can tell, it's always going to be from 1 to 10. I might have not run it enough times, but you just got to believe me on that. So yeah, let's take a look at the lab. Alright, and the lab says write a Java program that outputs a random number from 0 through 9, including both, every time the R key is pressed. Notice how he said including both. So think about what you have to put in the range for your .rand method to have any number from 0 and 9, and every time the key is pressed. So we're going to be using key press, we're going to be using an if statement, we're going to be using like the .equals method. Basically, this is kind of a culmination of all the previous stuff put together in this lab, okay? Just really simple stuff. This should be around like 4, like maybe even 3 lines of code. So yeah, you can make the code as long as you want it to be, as long as it works, right? So yeah, get to your lab and good luck, guys.